welcome back. Today I'm going to be working on this little tiny pumpkin tutorial. I had a special request from my niece Renee to make an actual video, not just the written pattern, so that she could follow along with it. So this little tiny pumpkin, it measures about 1.5 inches or so tall by about 2.5 inches wide. It's not a huge pumpkin, but it is adorable. You are going to need a size G hook, some yarn in the pumpkin color, whether it be orange, or if you prefer to do like the tans and grays, you could do something like that. But you're going to need a medium-sized ball of whatever the body of your pumpkin is going to be. And then you will also need just probably about a 2-foot section of the yarn that you want to use for the stem. For this one, I like to do the orange body with green stem. I've also done it with a like tan or beige body with a gray stem. Both look great. So totally up to you, but that's approximately how much yarn you're going to need for this project. You will also need scissors, a yarn needle, and some fluff. I use polyfil fiberfill, and that seems to work really well. This project should take approximately 15 minutes, give or take some. Also, all of the yarn that I'm using for this project is worsted weight. If you decide to use a different weight, you will want to adjust your hook size. So let's go ahead and get started. To start this project, you are going to need to do the magic ring or magic circle. They're the same thing, just known by different names. Go ahead and start that, chain 1, and then do 8 single crochets into the center of that magic ring. Once you have 8, go ahead and cinch that down a little bit, and then let me unwind the yarn a little bit. Then you're going to insert your hook into that first single crochet. So I like to count backwards from my hook anytime that I'm doing a magic ring. Go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And that is where my hook needs to go. So cinch that down. And I like to hold the tail from the magic ring with the first row or 2 after I'm done with it. So slip stitch here, chain up 1, and then we are putting 2 single crochets in each. So here's 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6, 7 and 8, 9 and 10, 11 and 12, 13 and 14, 15 and 16. So we have 16 single crochets. We're going to find the first stitch from that round, insert the hook, slip stitch, and chain up 1. For this round, we will be doing a sequence of 1 single crochet by itself, and then a single crochet increase in the next. And that's going to be all the way around. So we start with 1, 2 and 3, 4, 5 and 6, 7, 8 and 9, 10, 11 and 12, 13, 14 and 15, 16, 17 and 18, 19, 20 and 21, 22, 23 and 24. So we have 24 stitches here. We're going to go ahead and insert, slip stitch, and then the next few rounds are going to be 1 single crochet in each. So you single crochet all the way around, you slip stitch, you chain up 1, and you do it all again. And you are going to do that until you get to the end of row 8. So I've actually prepared a partially done one here. So if we look here, you can count the rounds. So this is going to be 1 round, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 rounds. It's starting to look a little bit like the beginning of the ball tutorial, but this is going to be just a little bit squattier than the ball. So once you're done with that 8th round, chain up 1. And for this round, we're going to be doing a single crochet and then a single crochet decrease over the next 2 stitches. We're going to do that all the way around. So we have 1, decrease for 2, 3, decrease for 4, 5, decrease for 6, 7, decrease for 8, 9, decrease for 10, 11, decrease for 12, 13, decrease for 14, 15, decrease for 16. That is the end of that round. Let's go ahead and insert and slip stitch. Now before we move on to the next round, we're actually going to grab our stuffing. So leave that sit there. You're going to want about a handful of stuffing, just enough to get it stuffed, but not so stuffed that you can't squish it down to be more of a pumpkin shape. So we're going to add that in there. Kind of squish that in. Give it a squish, make sure that it's still squishy and not just a air-filled pocket. Seems to be just about right, so we're going to leave that how it is. All right, let's get the last round done here. We're going to chain up 1, and we're going to do a decrease all the way around. So we're doing 1, decrease for 2, decrease for 3, decrease for 4, decrease for 5, decrease for 6, decrease for 7, and a decrease for 8. So we have 8 stitches at the end of this, just like we did at the beginning. We're going to go ahead and do our last slip stitch here. And then we're going to need about 24 inches, so about 2 feet of a tail left. I like to overestimate, but if you only have about 24 inches, you'll do just fine. So we're going to go ahead and pull that all the way through. And now we're going to grab our yarn needle. Right. Go ahead and thread that into your yarn needle. I like to kind of twirl it just a little bit to tighten up those strands together. Put that through. And we are going to use this tail for 2 things. The first one is we're going to cinch down these last 8 stitches so that we don't have this big open gap here. So here's 1. There's 2, 3, 4, and if you notice when I'm doing this, I'm going from the center of the opening to the outside, and I'm only grabbing half of that stitch. So here's 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, so let's cinch that down. And then what we're going to do is we are going to wrap this around, poke it in the center down here, and poke it back up through the bottom here, possibly the top, depending on which way you decide to put your stem on. Either way, poke it in the one side, come out the other. Tighten that down so that you can see just a little bit of an indent right here. And then do that again directly across. So we're going to wrap that around. Poke it in one side, bring it out the other. Make sure that these are staying directly across from each other. There we go. So now we have 2 indents. We're going to pick another spot about 1/3 of the way around on our little semicircle up here. So I'm going to go right here and insert here, poke through there. Then my next one is going to go directly across, going the other way. Insert, poke out the other side. There we go. Then our 5th indent is going to go in this nice big gap we've left here. Like that. Insert, poke out the other side, and you might have guessed it, we're going to go ahead and put our last indent directly across from that 5th one. Right there. Insert, poke out the other side. All right, so we have our 6 indents. Now we need to secure this string so that all of them stay where they need to. Just gonna kind of poke that needle under there, pull it through most of the way, leaving just a little loop that we can use to weave our string into to secure it. So I'm gonna poke that through there and then pull this tight over top of it, just like you would in sewing. And I'm gonna do the same thing a couple more times. Once you have that, you're going to take the tail and just poke it back into the project, poke it out wherever you would prefer to trim it from. And then what I like to do is I like to pull it extra tight so that when I trim it, the tail disappears. So that is the body of the pumpkin. You can squish it together a little bit to give it more of a pumpkin shape instead of a flat shape. So we've got the pumpkin. We now need our vine. And as you can see, I ended up with probably about 2 feet worth of yarn from the tail. So you can definitely play around with how much yarn you're going to use for that tail. So to the vine, we're going to go ahead and take our green or whichever color we're using for our vine. We are going to make our slip stitch or slip knot to start this piece. You're going to put that over your hook, cinch it down. Go ahead and chain 6. And then insert your hook into that first chain and slip stitch. And then we're going to go ahead and pull another loop just straight through. Trim the tail about 6 to 8 inches out. Should be good. Pull that through, and if you've noticed, when I started that slip knot, I made sure to leave a nice long tail for that side as well. So now I have 2 tails to work with, and what I'm going to do is take my yarn needle, I'm gonna insert the first tail into the yarn needle. I'm gonna pick whichever side of my pumpkin looks uglier, which is, I'd say this side. This side looks really neat. So I'm actually going to insert the vine at the ugly side of the pumpkin. And I'm going to poke that tail right down to the bottom, making sure that it's just outside of where it's all cinched. So there's one. And then I'm going to take the second tail and do the same thing, but just a little bit further over. So kind of across where it's cinched down. Add that in there. Make sure that it pokes out on the other side of the cinch. So there's that. You can see the vine already looks about how it's supposed to. I'm going to go ahead and flip it over and tie a square knot. So for a square knot, you're taking one strand, bringing it over the other, pulling it tight, and then using that same strand that went over the first time and bringing it back over on the second tying. That makes a square knot. And then all we have left to do is take these tails, poke them in, push them out wherever we want to trim them from. I'm going to do both real quick and then I'll trim them. All right, so we now have a little pumpkin with a couple pieces of green yarn to trim. There's one. Again, if you pull it really tight, when you go to trim it, you go to trim it, it just about disappears, and all you have to do is squish a little and it's gone. So, and that is the tiny pumpkin tutorial. If you have any questions about this project or would like to see me do a tutorial on either a different type of project or a different type of stitch, feel free to comment below. Thanks for watching.